What nourishes you? I don't mean, are you getting enough nutrients in your diet? And I don't really mean, what's your favorite food, although that could be part of it. The real question is, what nourishes your soul? It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if it's a combination of things. It's certainly a combination of things for me. One of the main things that nourishes my soul, though, is reading. I have known this my entire life, but I didn't realize it until recently, until I no longer felt like I had the time or energy to read. I started reading early. I was reading the Chronicles of Narnia when I was 4 and probably tearing through a book a week, or at least a book every few weeks, depending on the length, for the majority of elementary school. This went away to a certain extent in middle school due to a bad teacher and English classes that forced me to read books I did not want to read for an assignment, but I never stopped reading entirely. I still read books that I wanted to read in my own time. My reading habits had definitely slowed down, but I didn't fully stop. And I didn't really realize there was a problem. I mean, I knew I was sad I wasn't reading more, but I did not seem to see what effect it was having on me. At least, not until last year. I am currently in 12th grade. I have been told by many people that 11th grade is the worst year of high school, but I still didn't really know what to expect until I got there. Because no matter how much people tell you about the workload, there is no way to expect or prepare for being absolutely destroyed by the sheer amount of work you have to do. Some days when it got really bad, I was doing 6 to 8 hours of homework a night. When I wasn't, when I finally had a break, all I wanted to do was sit on the couch playing mindless games on my phone because my brain was so fried that anything requiring mental energy had to wait. Although reading has always come easily to me, this meant that reading had to wait too. To anyone who does not get their nourishment from books, from seeing an entire adventure play out in their head solely from having read parts of it on a page like I do, giving up reading may seem like a logical decision. It is absolutely okay to not have the connection to reading that I do. But for me, the loss of the thing that nourishes my soul broke me more than my schoolwork did. Realistically, it certainly gave me more time for homework, that is, when I was not so exhausted that I was falling asleep in front of my computer. And in theory, it also gave me time to do other things I wanted to do, although I was usually too tired to do them. I was already having a hard time, and the lack of the joy that reading gives me just made everything worse. Giving up reading in favor of other activities was not a conscious choice that I made. Life just simply got too busy, and I just got too tired for me to make time for it anymore. I think I cried the first time I realized how long it had been since I had read a book just because I wanted to, not because I had to for school. With that realization came a profound sense of loss. For me, reading was never just a fun thing I liked to do when I had extra time. It is, and has always been, a part of who I am. It is the thing that keeps me going when I just need a break. It's the thing that nourishes my soul when nothing else is helping. Creating art has a similar effect, but even that has its limits if I'm not feeling particularly creative on any given day. Other things can nourish my soul, but reading is the most reliable. It's not the only thing, but it's probably the one that I know I can go back to no matter how I'm feeling. I just got too busy for it. Giving up or getting too busy for something so important, having other things get in the way, is far too common. This probably does not happen for everyone, but I know that realistically, things have to be given up in order to keep other parts of life going. This is not a personal failing, it's just something that happens, and sometimes it's actually warranted. Everyone's situation is different, and trade-offs are essential to most areas of life. But if it can be helped, the thing that nourishes your soul should be the last thing to go, not the first. And unfortunately, I have noticed that it tends to be the first. Sometimes it has to be. Sometimes there really are no other better options, and it's awful when it does happen like that. But frequently, I think we just don't realize what we really need until we no longer have it. We also don't really give ourselves permission to take the time for the things that are important to us. I certainly knew I loved reading, but I didn't quite know just how important it was in making me feel like myself until all I was feeling was the loss of it. When I was in 9th grade and had a bit of a lull in my schoolwork, I picked up the book Good Omens. I think the first day of reading that book, I must have read somewhere between 60 and 80 pages. I read that book pretty quickly until I just stopped. Part of the problem was that I had a lot of summer homework that I had to do, which involved reading and annotating a book, so I didn't really feel like reading during the summer, even when it was a book of my choosing, because I was already doing it for school. Then 10th grade started, which was a shock to the system because the first day of 10th grade was my first time stepping foot in my school since 2020. I was still reading on my own a little bit during the summer, but I remember barely picking up Good Omens for the first few months of 10th grade. Even though I eventually finished the book, it happened in small increments. I didn't have that same intense focus that caused me to read large chunks in one sitting like I did in the beginning because I was just occupied with other things. I read a little bit more in 10th grade than I did last year, and I felt more myself in 10th grade than I did last year, but I still didn't feel quite right. I don't want to focus solely on the idea of giving to others, but I do want to look through that lens for a minute. The thing is, we live in a culture that places a very high importance on making sure that everyone else and all other responsibilities are taken care of. It's great to care for others, but we give and we give and we give and we never take. But we should. We need to put in the effort to nourish ourselves, no matter how hard it is sometimes to recognize how necessary it is. After all, how can you nourish others if you don't nourish yourself? It's like what they tell you in the safety demonstration on planes. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. If you want to help others, you first have to be able to breathe yourself. More importantly, though, nourishing yourself is important because you are important. Our UU principles place importance on the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That means everyone, including you. No matter how you feel about yourself, you are worthy of taking the time and energy that is needed to nourish your soul. I know this can be very difficult to realize and even harder to actually put into practice. Not everyone is there yet, and that's okay. But everyone's soul needs nourishment. Mine certainly did, but I was denying it in favor of getting all my schoolwork done. Schoolwork is important, but there is no replacement for happiness. One day, in my critical thinking class, my friend said to me that they didn't think they were doing enough. They didn't think they were being productive enough or getting enough done. They said they didn't think they were stressed enough. I think I just looked at them in disbelief for a minute. This is a friend who has expressed feeling stressed or overwhelmed to me, mostly regarding schoolwork, many times, and here they were saying they weren't doing enough. In our current culture and throughout history, we connect our worth to our productivity. This often means pushing ourselves to the limits, sacrificing everything that makes us happy just so that we can get more done. This is what my friend was talking about. They were talking about thinking they should be more stressed because at least it would mean that they would get more done and be more worthy or more useful. But being productive should not be the thing that matters most. Prioritizing the things that make you happy and nourish your soul should be the most important thing. Part of my friend's reasoning for why they weren't doing enough was the fact that I was doing more and I was more stressed. But is that really worth comparing? Not only should the goal be happiness rather than productivity, but my supposed productivity was the reason I felt exhausted and not myself a lot of the time. My productivity in school was even the reason I was not productive in other aspects of my life with other things I wanted to get done. It is why I was unable to work on turning my room from an obstacle course I can't get around to an actually functional place that I'm comfortable in. It is why I abandoned reading for far too long. No one should have to abandon their happiness in favor of being productive. When I went to California last spring, I finally had the chance to read again. I had 6 hours of flying each direction with various wait periods and layovers, and I had a fairly laid-back day in which I could do whatever I wanted. And after almost an entire school year of not reading, of not giving my soul what it needed, all I wanted to do was pick up a book and get lost in the story. So I did. I finished a book called The Magicians, and then I started another book, the second in a trilogy, called Lord of Shadows. Side note for all of you readers, I highly recommend Cassandra Clare's writing. She is the author of Lord of Shadows, and I've been reading her work since I was in elementary school. That book was the perfect thing to ease me back into reading because it had a familiarity that felt really comforting after such a long time. I say it eased me back into reading, but really I probably read over 400 pages in the span of about a week. And I probably felt the most myself that I have in a while. Nearing the end of one of my most stressful and time-consuming classes may have given me the time to read, but I know that reading was what made me feel like myself again. Because it's hard to be fully yourself when you cannot nourish your soul. This is why it is so important to find what nourishes you in life, why it is so much more important than productivity. Once you find it, find what gives you the energy and motivation to keep going. Do your best to set aside time for this. Yes, sometimes life gets in the way. It won't always work, and it won't always be possible. But when it is possible, and it means feeling like yourself again for the first time in a while, it's worth it. In the end of the story that I read earlier, Mavis took the last bite of mooncake after giving all the other pieces to her friends. Even when you want to feed others, don't forget to nourish yourself as well.